Hi, and welcome to episode 11 of How to Beat Nick. This episode isn't actually going to cover the cases Nick writes, it's going to cover the cases AR writes. And AR's got a couple of cases, a couple of case types, but the one we're going to focus on today is actor analysis. He's got two that I think really exemplarize the type of case I want to talk about. It's like as Anthony Joshua quit boxing and as Francis Ngannou don't quit the UFC and try to develop a boxing career. And basically, it's these incredibly irritating actor analysis choices that are just like, this person is making an incredibly high risk decision. They shouldn't do that. These cases are particularly strong for AR because they operate on two distinct levels. The first is just like the prag debate. Will this person be better off at the point at which they end up making this choice, which is a debate that AR thinks he can win on both of these cases. And they operate on the actor analysis debate. That is, this person has irrational risk preferences at the moment at which they are making the choice, and this leads them to make different choices. And if AR ever loses the central clash on, the kind of utilitarian outcomes of the debate, he'll just go for, but the actor doesn't think this way in PMR, and he's persuasive enough to pull it off. The way to beat cases like this, or really any actor debate that operates on this dual level of actor bias and normative understanding, is to really lean into the question of actor bias. And I touched on this in an earlier video, but the way you do this is you start with a couple of really trivial observations about the human condition and then very quickly boil down to debate into what matters most. So the first very trivial observation about the human condition is that we all experience all emotions at some point during our lives. We've been sad, we've been angry, we've been optimistic, we've been pessimistic, we've been fearful, we've been, bold to the point of stupidity at different points in our lives. This happens to everyone. But actor analysis debates occur during a specific moment or a small period of time where the actor is considering whether or not to make a choice. And there are strong arguments to be made about which emotions are most likely to drive an actor's decision-making calculus at any given moment in time. So, for example, in the case of Francis Ngannou, he quit the UFC to try a boxing career. And you have to make arguments for why Francis Ngannou felt kind of stupidly optimistic, courageous to the point of infallible. And many of those arguments, I think, hinge on either internal biases. Francis Ngannou had just won the World Heavyweight Championship. He was, incredibly optimistic about his own career prospects. Or external biases. There were people egging on Francis Ngannou, random people on Twitter being like, oh, you could do this, you'll be the greatest boxer ever. And just continually revalidating his irrational optimism about his own career and about his own career prospects in boxing. Notably, this comes before the predictive utilitarian outcomes in the round, because, again, if Ngannou was irrationally optimistic, he could recognize that there was a very high probability of failure and just discount that probability of failure. Be like, I don't care. I'm optimistic. It's been reinforced by my internal and external. It's been reinforced by my internal biases and by external validation. I'm just going to go and fucking do it because rah, rah, rah. Now, you have to be a little careful about this because, especially in the case of Francis Ngannou, AR will have a bunch of arguments about how actually the UFC will do the opposite. It'll kind of condition Ngannou to poo-poo his own career, etc., etc. But it's worth pointing out that you can do the internal weighing and be like, no, Ngannou's internal biases and people he perceives as third-party fans are way more persuasive to him than the UFC because he understands that the UFC is a financial incentive to keep him in the sport. And so he'll discount anyone affiliated with the UFC poo-pooing his boxing career as those people just trying to make money for themselves as opposed to give him legitimate or good advice. The way you make this argument maximally operative is you make it hyper-comparative the first time it's articulated. So it's not that Ngannou feels no fear. He feels some fear. That fear is just outweighed by his optimism and his courage for three reasons. And when you do this, it allows you to concede all of the gov arguments about bias in the other direction And you're like, yeah, but we've already beat this, right? We established the comparative warranting in LOC. Point of order, PMR is new. Like, no, we already beat this. Point of order, PMR is new. Point of order, PMR is new. And when you win a debate on this level, it, one, really narrows the debate. So it makes it very difficult for AR to weasel his way out of the central collapse because you're controlling the link into the actor's biases and therefore you're controlling the link into the round. Two, it allows you to really aggressively point of order AR because he's going to get up there and be like, it's weighing. And you're going to get up there and be like, right, but this was the LOC argument, right? You're calling it weighing, but you're responding to the central thrust of the op case. And most judges will not really let him get away with that, especially if it is the central read, the only thrust of the op case. The third and final piece of advice I have about these actor analysis cases is just because you're right doesn't mean it's true, right? AR and Nick both are very willing to kind of lie and just warrant falsehoods to get away with it. By narrowing the debate to the actor's biases and the actor's preconceived notions, it gives you the ability to over-warrant things that should be intuitively true, e.g., these people are all really rich, really famous, really optimistic about their own careers. You have to go up and warrant that because you can't rely on Nick and AR to give you that just because it's true. They're probably going to contest you on the warranting and say shit like, actually, Francis Ngannou is dirt poor for reasons, like 5 warrants, none of which are independently particularly persuasive. So you have to be very prepared to go warrant for warrant on the things that you should be taking for granted, just because Nick will leave those warrants in there in an attempt to exploit you if you don't warrant your arguments from real kind of first principles.